Hello dear listeners, welcome to another spine-chilling episode of Exception of Horror. I've been trucking for multiple decades now, and I've witnessed my fair share of odd and quirky things on the road. However, what I saw a couple of weeks ago was one of the oddest and creepiest experiences I've ever had. I was driving through the middle of the night somewhere in Nevada. Honestly, I don't remember exactly where, but I was surrounded by the vast emptiness of the desert. Driving on highways in the middle of the night, especially away from major cities, is usually quite boring, with very few cars on the road. That night I was cruising along, listening to a podcast to stay awake, when I caught up to a group of cars ahead of me. What struck me immediately was that all the cars were the same type black SUVs driving single file. Even more intriguing, the three cars had Nevada state license plates with just a single number on each 1, 2, and 3, in that order. The car with the number 1 plate was in the lead, followed by 2, and finally 3 at the end of the line. I followed them for miles, puzzled and intrigued by their unusual convoy. Suddenly, the group of cars slowed down slightly and turned off the highway onto a dirt road that seemed to appear out of nowhere. There was no street sign, mile marker, or any indication of a road being there. As soon as they turned onto the dirt road, they turned off their lights, blending into the darkness. I looked out into the desert, but I couldn't see a thing, not even the cars. I didn't dare stop or check out the road they had taken. I just kept driving, occasionally checking my mirrors for any sign of their return to the highway, but mile after mile, I saw nothing. The way they disappeared onto an unmarked road without slowing down was eerie. They must have known the area well. Who knows what kind of business they were up to down that dirt road. A long time ago, I worked for a small trucking company in the northeastern United States. There were many overnight drives on lonely backwood highways. One early morning, around 3 a.m., I was driving on a single-lane highway in Pennsylvania. My high-beam headlights were on, allowing me to see a good distance ahead. They had saved me many times from hitting deer and other animals. On this particular night, I saw a figure at the edge of my headlights. I slowed down, expecting it to be an animal, but quickly realized it was a person. Someone was sitting in the middle of the road with a hoodie pulled over their head, staring straight down. I blasted my horn several times, but they didn't move. I stopped about 90 feet away, debating whether to get out and check on them, but common sense told me it wasn't safe. I decided to drive around them, switching to the oncoming lane, moving slowly at about 10 miles per hour. Suddenly I heard a thump on my driver's side door. A person dressed in all black had jumped onto my truck, trying to open the door handle. Thankfully, I always kept my doors locked. I sped up, and the person jumped off. I didn't stop for the rest of the night. I had heard stories of truck jackings, but never thought it would happen to me. Trusting my instincts and staying in the truck likely saved me that night. A couple of years ago, in my first weeks as a truck driver, I experienced another unnerving event. As a female truck driver, I faced some minor harassment from fellow workers, but this incident was particularly troubling. I was on a multiple-day overnight haul through the Midwest in late fall. Around 1 a.m., a fellow trucker merged onto the highway a bit ahead of me. As I passed his truck, I gave a courtesy wave. Instead of a friendly response, he just stared at me emotionlessly. A minute later, I heard his voice on the trucker channel, claiming one of my tires was flat. I didn't notice any issues, so I thanked him and said I'd check at the next truck stop. He urged me to pull over immediately, insisting it was dangerous to continue. I decided to wait until the next stop, but he kept pestering me on the radio, even offering to help change the tire. I turned off my radio and drove to the truck stop. When I checked my tires, they were all fine. The man's persistence to get me to pull over was chilling. I reported the incident but never found out who he was. The thought of him still out there, possibly trying to lure other female drivers, is terrifying. One of my most traumatic experiences as a truck driver happened on a foggy night a decade ago. I was driving through thick fog, tired but close to my destination. The fog was so dense that my headlights barely illuminated the road, and the rain pounding on the windshield drowned out the radio. Road signs appeared and disappeared suddenly, and I struggled to stay in my lane. The fog got worse, and I considered pulling over. Visibility was only a few feet, so I turned on my hazards. The white lines on the road blurred into the mist, making it hard to judge where the road ended. I gripped the wheel tightly, focusing on not running off the road. In the fog, I suddenly saw a shape up ahead. It was another truck, and its lights were barely visible. It was reassuring to know that I wasn't the only one out here battling the fog. I flashed my headlights, partly as a friendly acknowledgement to the other driver and partly to make sure he saw me through the dense fog. As we approached each other, I realized something was wrong. The truck didn't slow down and kept coming straight at me, not veering right or left. Panic set in as I realized the truck wasn't going to slow down. I slammed on my brakes, and the tires screeched. The other truck was now close enough that I could see the driver, just a silhouette behind the windshield. My heart was pounding as I swerved to the right, narrowly missing a collision. The other truck kept going and disappeared into the fog behind me. I sat there in my truck, hands shaking on the wheel, trying to calm down from the near head-on collision and comprehend what had just happened. Was it a mistake? Did the other driver really not see me, or was it something more sinister? It felt like he was trying to run into me. I checked my mirrors and then cautiously pulled back onto the road, keeping my speed low through the rest of the fog. My nerves were on edge, constantly looking around for other vehicles. It seemed to take forever, but finally things started to clear up. I didn't sleep much that night, replaying the incident over and over in my mind. In the morning I checked my truck carefully, looking for any signs of damage, but found nothing. There was no evidence, but I'll never forget what happened that night. Once, while driving my truck on a cross-country trip, I experienced a terrifying situation. I was driving through the Appalachian mountain range one evening. After a recent stop to rest, I was fueled up to drive through the night, equipped with snacks and energy drinks to keep me awake. It was nearing sunset as I drove along a quiet, scenic highway. Everything looked pretty in the fading light. I came upon a person walking on the side of the highway trying to catch a ride. I enjoyed picking up hitchhikers because it made the drive easier with someone to talk to, and everyone I had picked up previously had been nice. I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder in front of the hitchhiker, waiting for them to come up to the side of my truck. A woman appeared by my driver's side window, looking tired and dirty, as if she had been camping for a few nights. I asked where she needed to go, and she quietly said the next town would be great. I agreed, noting that the town wasn't too far, and she hopped into the passenger seat. As we drove, I tried to make simple conversation, asking what she was doing in the Appalachians and where she was coming from. She gave short, one-word answers, monotonous the entire ride. All she said was that she had been camping and was heading back home, which was the town we were headed for. We arrived at the small town as dusk was settling in. For the first time, the woman spoke more than one word, mentioning that she lived just outside of town, off the highway. She asked if I could drive a bit farther and drop her off on the side of the highway near her house. It was a simple enough request, so I agreed, and we continued down the highway. After a while, she had me pull over onto the shoulder. From where I stopped, I could see a narrow dirt road leading to a dingy-looking cabin. As she gathered her backpack, I kept peering down the dirt road, finding it odd that she lived in such a run-down cabin. Suddenly I saw 3 men dart from inside the cabin to behind a woodpile. It happened in the blink of an eye, but I was sure of what I saw. The woman then asked if I wanted to come inside, take a break from driving, and get something to eat. I asked if she lived alone in the cabin, and she said she did, heightening my suspicion. Even if I hadn't seen the men, I would have probably declined, but now I definitely wasn't taking any chances. I thanked her but declined, saying I had to be on my way.